Alright, this might surprise you, but I quite like Tai Chi. Okay, so I have done, I think, 14 different martial arts in my life. And although that's not as good as Batman, I think it's still pretty good. So in this video, I'm going to use a complex randomization process to pick them out one at a time, tell you what my experience is in them, and ultimately rank them from best to worst. Ready for that? Let's go. Okay, so first up we've got catch wrestling. Okay, I think I've done catch wrestling for about a month, and it's a really interesting part of no-gi grappling. If you're not familiar with the rule set, basically being pinned on your back is an instant loss in catch wrestling, so you can't go to the guard like you do in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what that means is guys fight out of the turtle a lot, and they also go for submission holds from basically anywhere. And this is kind of a real important philosophical difference between catch and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Traditional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really emphasizes positional dominance and getting to like mount or back mount. Catch wrestling emphasizes getting a pin or like submitting the guy from wherever you can. So yeah, I think catch wrestling is great. I think it has some holes in it that like you pick up from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but certainly like it's worth wrestling under the rule set. I feel like modern grappling actually catch is making kind of a comeback as we see people going for leg lock submissions from anywhere. Great to train in, great fun. Very explosive, love it. Catch wrestling, A tier. Okay, next we've got boxing. Okay, I love boxing. I did boxing for about 12 months at a pretty serious boxing gym in Bristol. Got punched in the head quite a lot, probably more than I should have. Boxing's fantastic, teaches you to get hit and keep moving forward, teaches you footwork, distancing, movement, punching hard, lot of useful stuff. Teaches you to get hit and keep going, which is something that a lot of traditional martial arts are absolutely dreadful at. A lot of techniques in traditional martial arts kind of seem to assume that if you hit the guy once, he's gonna like stop wanting to fight you anymore, which I can say from experience is absolutely not true. Boxing, I'm gonna say A tier. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Okay, this is actually the first martial art I ever did. I did it for like 2 years at university. I got pretty good in it. I was like a purple belt, which I think is like 4-3 the rankings. The gradings were pretty hard. It was pretty savage. So it had quite a lot in common with Aikido, but it also had moves that were kind of Judo inspired, and it was very heavily self-defense oriented. We used to have a thing in Jiu-Jitsu that was called the V, where you would have guys like running at you one by one in a V shape, and you would like deal with them one by one like you were Jean-Claude Van Damme. We would have like the gauntlet where you walk down 2 lines of people and they would like randomly attack you, and we had the circle where they would come at you from all sides. And like doing that, you feel pretty invincible. Unfortunately, I came to find out that like we were practicing the moves with very little actual resistance from the partners, which meant that we weren't getting very good at applying them on like resisting opponents, for which reason I don't think Japanese Jiu-Jitsu was that useful for me. One thing that it was fantastic at was breakfalls. Like it had the style I did had a really comprehensive way of teaching breakfalls, from like kneeling breakfalls all the way up to like diving over a bunch of people and doing a breakfall, diving like backwards over people who were standing up and doing like backwards breakfalls. To this day, I am pretty amazing at breakfalls. It is one of my best skills. It's something I think everyone should learn. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, I'm gonna say like B/C tier for actual fighting, but A tier for breakfalling. Next up we got wrestling. I love wrestling. I've probably done dedicated wrestling sessions for about 8 months worth of actual classes with some like shoot boxing and stuff in there. I just think it's great. I haven't done so much of the down on the mat stuff, but obviously I've done a whole bunch of takedowns, especially learning like chain wrestling where you go from one movement to another is just super satisfying. One of my early wrestling coaches said to me that when you do wrestling properly, it actually feels like what Aikido promises to be. And I think that's super accurate. Wrestling looks like a big grunty, like muscular sport, but when you do it well, the moves are almost effortless to pull off. At least against people who don't know what they're doing. It's a great base for fighting because you basically dictate where the fight goes, and it's a load of fun to practice. I love wrestling. I wish the UK had more of a background in it. I wish I could have done it when I was younger. S tier. Tai Chi. All right, this might surprise you, but I quite like Tai Chi. I did it for about 6 months. I was doing like short yang form, that kind of thing. Very relaxing, and from what I understand, there are reasons why it's associated with longevity in like Chinese culture. There are certain movements from it that are really like gentle on the wrist and like do a sort of nerve flossing thing, which has actually helped me out with injuries in the past. A lot of the stability and footwork it teaches you, I believe, are going to be helpful for older people. I really like Tai Chi. I could see taking it up again when I get too old to do Jiu-Jitsu. Tai Chi, like B tier. MMA! Okay, I'm putting MMA as a separate one because like there are things you practice in MMA classes that you don't really practice in any other sport. So you practice striking from the guard, striking from the clinch, like doing striking and then like putting takedowns into it. I really like MMA. It's fun to practice. I think it's worthwhile to practice for a lot of people. I don't think it works very well on its own because when you're worried about punches, it's very difficult to like learn the specific little nuances that make grappling really effective. So if all you jump into is an MMA class, you're never really going to get that good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or takedowns or any of that stuff. So MMA is great. You should definitely have a go at it, but I think you should split out the different arts in order to like get the most from all of them. Capoeira. Okay, I did Capoeira for like 2 years. I did it after I gave up Japanese Jiu-Jitsu at university. I started out doing Angola, which is the kind of very more slow pace, sort of more dancey style where more emphasis is put on the musical instruments. And then I moved into Regional, which is like the fast style, lots of spinning kicks, lots of like jumping through the air, aerial stuff. I really enjoyed doing Capoeira. Do I think it's useful for fighting? Probably not. Like there are some kicks in it that, yeah, absolutely you could take somebody's head off with. Like, is it a complete fighting system with like the Ginga and stuff? I don't think so. Capoeira is just great fun to practice on its own. It's like a fun thing that will make you fit, keep you limber, give you a reason to train. Like, it will make your kicks better, but it's not like a way to learn to fight. Capoeira, I'm going to say B tier. I can play the berimbau though. Hapkido! I did Hapkido for like one session. It seems to have quite a lot in common with Aikido, but I think with striking in it, I really can't give you much more of a steer than that. Hapkido, undecided. Wing Chun. Okay, I did Wing Chun for about 6 months at university. I got about as far as doing the first couple of forms. I was getting into the whole like sticky hand stuff. I'm just going to say I don't think Wing Chun works. I've never seen documentary evidence of it working. I've never seen anybody use it in a fight in any kind of way that looks like actual Wing Chun. I've never had it explained to me how a Wing Chun punch is better than like just punching somebody like a boxer would. I think Wing Chun is still probably slightly better than some other martial arts on this list, but only because like if a guy who was already strong and quite aggressive used it, it would be better than some of the other stuff that's out there. Because ultimately, going like this towards somebody really fast is better than not hitting them at all, even if it's not as good as hitting them with a right straight. Wing Chun, I'm going to say D tier. Muay Thai. Obviously, Muay Thai is great. I did Muay Thai for about 2 years. I did a bit at uni. I actually went to Thailand for a month to like train twice a day, every day. I love Muay Thai. Obviously, it has some of the most like strong, efficient kicks. Like learning a really powerful leg kick is super important to being like a good fighter overall. I think it's very important to learn how to like throw a good elbow, throw a good knee. I think the Thai clinch is really valuable to have like a basic understanding of. Muay Thai is fantastic. Depending on where you train Muay Thai, it might be worth doing a bit of boxing as well, because I do think that some Thai academies don't put that much emphasis on hands, and learning to punch hard is a really valuable skill in itself. You train hard, you like get good at hurting people, you get good at not panicking in a fight. Muay Thai, S tier. Aikido. Whew. All right. I don't think Aikido works. Like maybe Steven Seagal is going to be mad at me. Maybe somebody's going to come and try and fight me. But I have never seen anybody make anything that looks like Aikido work. If the wrist locks that you learn in Aikido worked, somebody would be doing them in grappling or MMA by now. You don't train with resistance in Aikido, you don't ever spar in Aikido, and so I just don't understand how anybody can make it work in an actual fight. Probably when it was invented, it did actually work. There's a quote floating around from Ueshiba Marehi, which I hope I'm pronouncing right, who's the founder of Aikido, where I think he said that like atemi, which is striking, is 90% of Aikido. And I think that's probably accurate, but modern Aikido doesn't really practice striking. So like when your founder's saying you should be able to hit dudes in the face and you're just practicing like spiraling wrist locks, I don't know what you're doing. If you read the book Angry White Pajamas, which is actually excellent and is about the Tokyo riot police training like in Aikido, there's a scene where a bunch of the really, really senior Aikido experts get in a bar fight and none of them use any Aikido. They're all just punching dudes. Aikido, I think you could practice it for 10 years and never actually be able to use it in a fight. D tier. Judo! I love Judo. I studied Judo for about 1.5 years under an international level competitor called Vasily Panfil. He was Moldovan, he looked like Action Man, and it was just an incredible experience. Judo teaches you a whole bunch of useful things. It teaches you to like move another person's weight around. It teaches you foot sweeps. It teaches you like grabbing and pulling. It teaches you to manipulate people's weight and balance, and ultimately, yeah, it teaches you to chuck them on the floor. If you got good at Judo, it might be the only martial art you need. If If you can chuck someone on the floor really hard, they're not going to really want to fight you anymore. And if you can pin them after that, then you can just wait for the cops to show up. When you hit a proper foot sweep in judo and the guy just like smacks into the ground like he stepped on ice, it feels amazing. And judo is kind of making a comeback. It's part of the sort of modern meta in stand-up grappling. People are using a lot of foot sweeps, a lot of stuff like harai goshi. You've got to learn judo if you want to be good at grappling in this day and age. I still might try and get my black belt one day. Judo, S tier. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously, I love this. It's the thing I've been doing for way longer than anything else. I started BJJ in like 2004. Depending on how you want to work it out, I've probably spent about 15 years on the mat, like 20 years in total, like thinking about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and doing it. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is fantastic. It's like playing a video game, except you're learning a real life skill that might save your life. There's an infinite amount of stuff to learn. You can find a style that fits your body shape and like temperament. It's just so much fun. Obviously, I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It is S tier all day. Parkour. Is this a martial art? I don't really know. It's the only one that involves like running away from people, but I've heard people call it a martial art. I've probably done it for about 3 months. I've done like a dozen formal lessons in it, and then I practiced it a bunch outside of those. I really like parkour. I think it's like a great thing to learn. Like obviously stunt videos on the internet are like a big thing, but as with any martial art, the stuff that will like get you most of the way, it's kind of a Pareto principle vibe where 80% of the value of parkour comes from the first 20% of stuff you learn, like vaulting over things, doing precision jumps, doing like climb ups and that sort of thing. I don't know if you would call it a martial art. You're not going to learn to kick somebody's ass doing it. You could probably learn to run away from a bad situation. I would recommend learning parkour. Don't know if it's a martial art. B tier. Okay, somehow I forgot that I've also done Shaolin Kung Fu. So I did it for about 2 years, training about 2 or 3 times a week. And I eventually went to China, where I went to the Shaolin Monastery and trained a bunch with the guys there. And I guess the thing about Shaolin Kung Fu is, at least the style I did, there wasn't that much fighting in it. Like we would spar very occasionally in that kind of sandar style where it's kicks, punches, and occasional takedowns. But we didn't do that much of it. Mostly what I learned was forms. I put a lot of time into learning like a bunch of the basic forms and then some of the kind of broadsword forms, the spear forms, things like that. Great fun, like a really good form of exercise and mental discipline and like an interesting thing to learn, but ultimately more like a form of almost, I guess, dance than actual fighting. Like you're learning these preset steps that have very little relation to anything you would actually do in a fight. I also learned a load of gymnastics. We used to train at a place with a sprung floor, so I got into doing like the 360 butterfly twists, a load of flips, that kind of thing. I could do like a one-legged 360 tornado kick. I loved doing it, but it wasn't really fighting. And in fact, story time, I would say that Shaolin Kung Fu was actually the thing that triggered me to get into real fighting. So I went to Shaolin and I would occasionally watch the guys fighting at Ta Guo, which is the big school across the road, where they would spend like a year focused on forms and then a year focused on pretty hard sparring. And I met a guy who trained there, quite a big guy, and he challenged me to a fight. And I was like, do you know what? I've just realized I can't actually fight. So I came home, I kind of stopped doing Kung Fu at that point, and that was when I got into boxing, then eventually Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. I loved Shaolin Kung Fu. I had a great time doing it. My teacher was fantastic and had a real knowledge and respect for this incredibly old discipline, but it's not a form of fighting. Like, I didn't learn anything about fighting doing it. So Shaolin Kung Fu, I'm going to say A tier just because it's fun, but it will not teach you to fight. And that is every martial art I've ever tried. To sum up, I basically recommend doing a striking thing, a throwing thing, and like a grappling on the ground thing. And if you do those and there's sparring in, I don't think you can go far wrong. And if you want to learn more about how to get good at basically any skill, I recommend watching this video next. And if you do Aikido or Wing Chun, please hit me up in the comments. We can talk about it.